to reduce the amount of slides that you guys see and show you the power of Windows Azure AD Premium by showing a lot of demos and how they work in tandem. My name is Vishal Shirodkar. I am the technology specialist for Azure in this region, and I'm going to be helped for this particular session by my colleague Radhi, who's the TSP or the technology specialist for mobility.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Hopefully you've had a great 2 days, and the next 1 hour is as great with Vishal and myself.
So cloud identity and access management, Active Directory, Azure Active Directory Premium, quite a mouthful. Obviously, it doesn't do justice to what the product is capable of doing. But the objective of this today's session was quite simple. We wanted to give you a grasp of what are the technology trends happening in this space. Why are we looking at Azure Active Directory Premium? You already are familiar with Active Directory on-premise. If you look at the Indian market over here, almost 80 to 85% of the customers in India have some form of function or some sort of presence of Active Directory, which is their primary authentication source. So the objective is to, if I want to migrate these users onto cloud, what kind of approaches do I have? How easy it is to do it? The current reality in terms of why are we looking at migrating users or groups onto cloud? How does it facilitate single sign-on or same sign-on? How does it facilitate access to your internal applications as well as applications which are currently hosted on the cloud? And we are not just talking about specific Microsoft applications. We are talking about the overall application portfolio, which includes your close to 1,000 and more software as a service applications. Then a brief on what is Azure Active Directory, the definition of what we call Azure Active Directory, what are the tools available for enabling hybrid identity, which is primarily the focus of this particular session. Give you a brief on multi-factor authentication, which is our piece for MFA, as we call it, a second factor of authentication, and then get into a deep dive into demos, multiple demos, and then give you a brief as to what is the roadmap we have for Azure Active Directory over the next 6 to 12 months, just to give you that this is a continuous evolving process. So let me start off with asking you the technology trends of, do you agree with this particular slide? And this is 6 to 7 months kind of a slide, which actually talks about the current trends that we have. Around 2.5, 3 years back, the trend of the buzzword was virtualization, where everyone was considering, doing server consolidation, virtualizing their servers, using multiple technologies. Right now, the same customers are looking at adopting cloud aggressively. So it's almost 70% of the CIOs are looking at some sort of, cloud adoption, whether in the software as a service space or infrastructure as a service space, and of course, platform as a service space. So if you look at it in terms of why this is driving cloud adoption, it's primarily because of the speed at which you can deliver services. It's in terms of the scale that we provide to you. If you're looking at an Active Directory implementation in-premise, you would probably have some sort of scale based upon the sizing of the server. When you move it on Azure, it's infinite scale. And the economics of scale gives you the primary benefits that customers are looking for. Then, of course, you have in terms of why Azure Active Directory. Now, we've been in this particular space for almost 25 years. We've been running cloud services for close to 21 years, including within our own data centers. We've been having some sort of authentication done, whether you're accessing Outlook, whether you're accessing O365, or whether you're accessing Azure. And if you see the current trend over here, especially with the launch of O365 and Azure, the number of authentications that are happening per week is more than 12 billion. So that's 12 billion unique user authentications. And of course, you have a tremendous growth that's been happening over the last 1 year, ever since we were aggressive with infrastructure as a service. And almost more than 50% of the Fortune 500 customers have some form of Azure adoption happening within their organizations. Now, once you have an Azure adoption, the first thing that the question gets asked is, okay, I am right now maintaining multiple identities. I, as a CIO, are looking at enabling my users to access these applications. I am looking at BYOD, which is bring your own devices, or CYOD, as you call it, carry your own devices. And right now, the average number of devices carried by users is more than 2.53 at least. So you have your iPhone with you, you might have an iPad with you, you'll have your designated Windows device or Mac OS given to you by your company. So the average number of devices is pretty high. How do I control what the user does on those particular devices? How do I enable enterprise identity policies on those devices? So that's one of the biggest challenges that companies are facing. This is the current reality. You might agree with me on this, but this is what feedback we've got from customers. I am looking at multiple cloud services. I am looking at implementing, accessing these cloud services from multiple endpoints. Now, this endpoints is extremely important. The endpoint can be your iPhone, it can be your Android tab device, it can be your Microsoft Surface device, it can be anything. Now, from this particular endpoint, you're accessing not only applications internal to your organization, which is what we call private cloud, you're also accessing applications on the public cloud. Now, when I say public cloud, it's a generic public cloud over here. It can be any public cloud service. It can be Windows Azure, obviously because it's an Azure conference. It can be an AWS service. It can be something, if you see the list over here, there are multiple common SaaS-based applications that customers are looking at adopting aggressively. The most common one you can think of is SAP SuccessFactors, or Salesforce.com, or O365, which is the primary SaaS application that we have. Box, as well as common conferencing applications like from Cisco and Citrix. Now, if this is the challenge over here, you can imagine the kind of number of user IDs that a user has to remember, and the kind of complexity that an organization has if we try to enable users to access these applications. The entire concept of Azure Active Directory Premium is to simplify this entire process of access. Now, this process of access simplification primarily means that a user who's accessing any of these applications from any of those devices which are listed over there, not Microsoft as non-Microsoft devices, should seamlessly access this using a single username and password. Certain applications, as I progress with my session, I'll tell you what kind of applications we support. Certain applications might support same sign-on, certain applications might support a password-based sign-on, certain applications will also support a federated-based sign-on. Right? So federation is the key word. Federation is becoming extremely popular, especially with the advent of cloud services. If you take ADFS as a concept, it's been in existence in Windows Server for the last 5 years. It's only now that we're seeing a rapid adoption and deploying federation services because customers are realizing the benefit of using federation and federated applications. So this is the current reality. It's pretty complex, and if you don't have some sort of a solution in place, you would end up spending a lot of time and amount in simplifying or at least helping your users remember these passwords. So which brings us to the public identity, which is primarily where Windows Azure lies over here. Now, in this case, if you see, I just wait for the slide to build up. Yeah, thanks, Radhi. So you have Windows Azure Active Directory as the central identity point or control plane, as we call it. You have your in-premise Active Directory server that you're currently hosted, correct? You might also have other directory services. Organizations are not homogeneous, they are heterogeneous. They would have a combination of different legacy applications. You might be using an open LDAP directory, you could be using a novel directory. There are certain customers still using legacy systems. But you do have an Active Directory server in place, through which you do domain authentication, user authentication. Some customers have deployed extremely complex password policies or even group policies to manage these users. Then, of course, you have PCs and devices. Now, we are talking about devices currently. The reason is obviously because the price point that a device that you get is pretty low, and customers right now passing the onus of purchasing a device to an end user. You buy whatever device you want, this is the budget, these are the empaneled devices, we'll enable application access for you. In that case, you have multiple form factors they need to support. Then you have the application access. You might be accessing applications hosted on the Microsoft public cloud, or you could be accessing applications hosted on non-MS cloud services. Now, the integration piece over here is the synchronization that happens between your in-premise Active Directory, irrespective of the number of users that it might have, with your Windows, Microsoft Azure Active Directory. Now, this comes, yeah. So when you do the synchronization, you have basically enabling all your users to log on to either your public cloud service or access your internal applications. So what is Azure Active Directory? So this is sort of a definition, sort of an elevated definition that we call it. It's a comprehensive identity and access management cloud solution, similar to what we had around 10 years back when we actually launched Active Directory. It combines directory services. Now, this is extremely important. It's just not a pure directory services. It combines directory services, advanced identity governance, which means that I want to control a user the moment he logs onto a particular application. I want to implement conditional access. If he's got a laptop that is given to him by his organization, he can access. But if he's got a laptop that he has on his own, how do I control the access on those particular devices? Application access management, irrespective of whether the user is accessing an in-premise application, could be a web-based application, could be a client-server application, it doesn't matter. I want to provide a platform for developers to extend that as well. And of course, I have the Active Directory Premium, which provides you additional capabilities. How many of you have heard of Azure RMS? Rights Management Services on Azure, okay, which is primarily our document protection technology. How many of you heard of Intune, which is our MDM solution on the cloud? So Azure Active Directory Premium leverages, or it's a pivotal point of control where it allows you to protect documents using Azure RMS, as well as ensure device protection and management of the devices using Windows Intune. So Azure Active Directory is a directory on the cloud. Okay, it allows you to centrally manage identities and access. Irrespective of what the devices are. It allows you to monitor and protect access to cloud applications. Now, the biggest challenges is, how do I control what kind of application access the user has? How do I generate security reports? How do I generate auditing reports? How do I enforce how many devices that the user registers on my cloud service? And how do I control? Let's say, for example, if a disgruntled employee, gets fired, or let's say a vendor who's not a full-time employee starts leaking confidential information. How do you control those endpoints? How do I ensure that if I find some sort of a mischieving happening, I'm going to completely wipe out that particular device remotely? And then I'm going to empower users. Now, when I say empower users, it's extremely important. One of the first things when we talk about empowering users is the ability for users to access whatever application that they want. If a user wants to add himself to a particular group, if a user wants to create security groups or distribution groups, if a user wants to do self-service password reset, which is the most common scenario right now. If you're having users log into your domain controller right now, and if the guy forgets his password, or if he wants to change his password, the only option he's got is a contact help desk, or you need to deploy some sort of a identity management solution which will allow or facilitate this password change process. I can implement that process directly on Windows Azure AD. So which brings us to the first question that I'm going to ask the audience over here. There are a couple of prizes, I think, for the right answer. If you see this particular diagram over here, okay, it offers you two different scenarios. You are synchronizing your Windows Server Active Directory with Microsoft Azure Active Directory. You are also implementing some sort of a single sign-on using federation services. Now, this particular synchronization engine that we use, okay, which right now also supports password hash sync. What is the current name of that particular tool? A show of hands over here. Yes?
No.
That's the older version. I said the current name. Show of hands, no repeating the answer.
Non-MS employees.
Huh?
Non-Microsoft people in the audience. Please raise your hand.
Non-Microsoft people or Microsoft full-time employees will not get anything.
There.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Dersing, no. Dersing is the older version.
There.
Yes. Pardon?
No. There.
Yes. She gets a prize. So Windows Azure Active Directory Sync is the name of the tool. Thank you so much. I'm really happy that you are aware of the trends which are happening in Dersing processes. So we have multiple tools. Dersing was the older version. Dersing is still in use. But right now we are having Windows Azure Active Directory Sync, which is a tool which is used for synchronization process. And this is a single step tool. And you should be extremely aware of this particular tool because this tool, in addition to providing directory synchronization process, it also offers you to enable users on your cloud services. It also does password sync. Previously, we only offered user-based synchronization, which means that the password would not write back to your internal AD. Now we also offer password hash sync. Now, when you say password hash sync, this is when the security team starts getting all paranoid. It's not the actual password that gets stored over there. It's the hash of that particular password. We have to double hash of it, and then it gets encrypted and stored on Azure. Now, the advantage of this is twofold. One is it allows you seamless access to any cloud-based service application. Second thing is, the moment you forget your password, you have the ability of going to any desktop, open the self-service portal, which Radhi will be showing it to you, change the password over there, and the password writes back to your internal AD, which facilitates self-service password reset across multiple devices. I mean, I don't need the user to come into my organization, log into his domain to change the password. I don't need him even connect to help desk to change the password. This is what we call by self-empowering those users. I'm giving the ability of changing the password, and there are multiple ways in which we enforce security over here. One is to multi-factor authentication, which is native to Windows Azure AD Premium, and second is by asking challenge response questions, which is a new feature which has been added to Windows Azure AD. So if you see this particular slide over here, we provide you synchronization with on-premises AD. We have already populated this particular portal with more than 2,400 SaaS-based applications. And I'll show you what those SaaS-based applications are. The most common ones, Salesforce.com, Citrix, WebEx, SAP SuccessFactors. These are all applications which are available and which can be enabled for users. Now, the beauty about these applications is if the application provider, if you see the list of the 2,400 plus apps over there, some of them also provide federated synchronization with my Active Directory. Which means today, if a new user joins an organization, which Radhi is going to simulate and show it to you, I can have a capability where the user can not only log into my Active Directory, but he can even create a user within that SaaS-based applications without configuring that SaaS application again. So the power is it's a single sign-on that happens for that particular user. I can even publish applications which are password-based sign-on. So let's say, for example, you have your marketing team, a communications team, and they have a Facebook account or a Twitter account. I can control access to these applications also to my Azure AD. Last but not the least, integrating custom apps. Now, I've spoken to you about 2,400 integrated popular apps. What about applications that you're developing internally within your organizations? What if you have certain client-server applications, expense applications, HR applications, which you want to populate to Azure directly? So we have a tool called Web Application Proxy. We have the ability of reverse publishing your applications onto Azure and granting access to those users. So when a user clicks on or logs onto that particular portal, he sees a list of not only SaaS-based applications, but he also sees a list of internal applications that your team is developing or deploying. So this is some of the common applications that are integrated with our Windows Azure AD Premium. This is a small subset based upon usage and based upon how popular these apps are. If you go to the actual portal, you will see you can search based upon categories and you can choose whatever application that you want. So in a nutshell, what does Azure AD Premium do? It allows you to manage your identities and access. Okay, it's a comprehensive identity management piece that is given to you. You can centralize access administration of pre-integrated SaaS apps. And last but not the least, it provides you a secure method of allowing a user to access using multi-factor authentication. Do you want to ask the next question for multi-factor authentication? Before the next
How
slide?
many people have heard about Azure multi-factor authentication? What are the 3 ways of authenticating using Azure MFA?
Show of hands. Let's pick someone
There
from
at
this
the
side of the
back.
audience. Yeah.
Oh, that's him.
Yeah. Yes, sir. One in the yellow shirt.
No.
No. Okay.
Yes.
No. No. Show of hands. Yes,
Yes.
sir. You, sir, over there.
Can you just,
Yes.
somebody name
What are-
all 3?
What are the 3 types of mechanisms that we facilitate with MFA? What are the-
Vishal,
Yes, you got it right.
Yes.
Call, app, and SMS. So there are 3 ways in which you can we have a gift to that person over there? Thank you so much. So there are 3 ways in which you can facilitate multi-factor authentication. One is a phone call that the user gets. Second thing is an SMS that the user gets. And third one is a mobile app. Now this mobile app is available across all 3 platforms. It's available on the iOS platform, it's available on Android Store, Google Play, it's available on the Microsoft Marketplace as well. Which means that as an administrator, I can control it, enforce it. As a user, let's say, for example, Radhi has a different phone number. Maybe she carries 2 different phones. And I've already configured multi-factor authentication, but she wants to configure a different phone where the authentication request is going to call back. She can go to the self-service portal and control that option. Now, when I do self-service password reset, initially we used to offer authenticating that user only using MFA. But a lot of customers told us, and a lot of customers who deployed FIM. How many of you have heard of Forefront Identity Manager? So a lot of customers who deployed FIM, primarily the self-service password reset capability, the FIM has an ability of enforcing password change using challenge response questions, that you can ask. You can create a list of 6 to 7 different questions, and you can ask random questions. If a quantum of those questions are answered correctly, he gets to change the password. A lot of customers wanted that capability on Azure AD Premium, and we've actually added that feature. So today, if a customer wants to enforce self-service password reset, he has the option of enforcing it either using MFA, or he can create his own challenge response questions and ask them to the user when he first registers. So there's a lot of onus given to the user to simplify any process whatsoever for facilitating password change. Now this particular URL see over there, which is http://myapps.microsoft.com, that's the only URL that the user has to remember. So this can either go as an email to him telling him, okay, we have facilitated you as a user, please go to this particular portal and access whatever applications that you want. Based upon the kind of rights that I've assigned to this particular user, he sees a list of applications that are provided to him. He can create distribution groups. He can, register for self-service password reset. He can even, answer the question that have been asked to him for facilitating self-service password reset. Yeah, so this is how the entire process looks like. Now I'm going to show you a particular piece, which is the dosing piece, what it looks like. So I have my Azure portal over here. This is my Azure portal. I have a couple of VMs running over here. Now these VMs, I have a VM on which I have configured dosing primarily, and I'll show you that particular tool. So I'm actually logging onto my virtual machine hosted on Azure. Okay. Let me just see if this works. So till this process logs in, I'll show you the Azure AD Premium that I've created. So this is the set of cloud services that I have. I have my Active Directory over here, which is the premium version that I subscribed to. Yeah. So this is my VM which I'm running on the cloud currently because I wanted to create a simple mechanism of facilitating the demo. I could have this particular VM running on my in-premises also, which means that this is a server which is connected to your in-premise Active Directory. I'm operating the users in this particular Active Directory, and I'm then syncing it directly to my Azure AD Premium. So I'll just wait for this thing to come up. So over here you have my Premium Active Directory. This will show you a list of users which have been synced. Now, the list of users are synced either from the local directory or explicit users that are created on this particular AD as well. Now, if you see over here, these are the users which have been already synced. I had created test users prior to the demo, which actually shows you the users which have been created and which have been synced from local Active Directory. Then I want to show you groups. Groups also are synced. If you want to control, you can put a very granular level as to what kind of user accounts, groups, OUs do you want to sync onto cloud. There will be certain instances where certain users and groups you don't want to sync onto the cloud, maybe because of some security reasons. I can control it as to which particular OUs can sync. So some OUs which need to be on-premise will remain on-premise. Certain OUs which need to be synced will be synced on Azure to facilitate application access. Then I have domains over here. I have created a custom domain. When you actually create an AD Premium account, you will get some random, name with on.microsoft.com attached to it. Obviously, you want to ensure that it reflects your organization identity. So I've actually purchased a domain name from GoDaddy, which I've been renewing for every year, and called it epgwest.in because I'm in West and I'm part of the EPG group. Once I associate that with my premium, this becomes my domain name. So every user who's part of that particular domain will have a user at the epgwest.in. In case of Radhi, she has a contoso.com domain, which she'll show you. This is the part where I do directory integration, which means that I've created my domain, now I've activated it. Now I activated this last night when I was configuring the demos, which is around 18 hours back. And if I want to deactivate the demo, I, as an administrator, can deactivate from this particular list itself. So I have a domain which is one of the key things why I was emphasizing on the newer tool, which that lady mentioned, is one of the common challenges was an organization might not have a single forest. Okay, if you're a huge conglomerate or if you are a complex organization, you might end up with multiple forests, right? And the biggest challenge with DirSync was synchronizing user accounts when you have multiple forests. With Windows Azure Active Directory Sync tool, I can configure multiple forests to sync with my AD. And these multiple forests can be independent of each other. I don't even need to create a trust relationship. All I need to create is a user account which has admin rights on that particular forest. It's that simple. Once I configure the directory synchronization, I have my user accounts populated. So let me just take 30 seconds of the time. I'll show you the tool over here. So this is the directory synchronization tool. The directory synchronization tool runs on a particular schedule, okay, which means that it runs at 3 a.m. every night when the user accounts are created, or you can even enforce the synchronization process by disabling the task scheduler and then enforcing the sync process. So once the synchronization process is complete, I skip it because it takes a lot of time for synchronization. So I just specify the username and the password. Then I specify the Active Directory domain credentials. User matching, if there are multiple forests, I can match specific users to attributes and sync onto AD. Optional features, are there any particular services which I want to enable, as well as Azure AD apps that I want to access from this particular user. So once I do this, the synchronization process gets complete, and I have my users created in this particular portal over here. Now, I've created a user account for Radhi, okay? Now, Radhi is the first time user who's joined the organization, okay? Now, she's going to start provisioning her apps, okay? Provisioning her user IDs and password, and then configuring the apps that she needs access to. Over to you, Radhi.
So basically, I'm a new employee at Contoso company. And the day I was recruited, I'd given certain details to the organization, to the IT. And now it's my first day. I've come in. IT has just sent me this email on my Outlook ID, which is my personal ID. It says, okay, please click here to set the password for your new user account and then access all your corporate resources here. And that's the user ID that they've created for me. So basically, there is no leak that could take place. The temporary password that IT has created for me actually has not been stored anywhere or given to anyone. And I can directly go in and start setting up my own password. So let's see how that is actually happening out here. I'm just going to enter my ID, fill in this CAPTCHA, and go ahead. So what it's going to do, it's going to take me to a kind of verification step over here, where IT had taken down my mobile number as a part of my application, and they had also actually asked me to answer certain security questions to be used as a verification step. So very common way to verify for your identity while doing an SSPR could be a text mobile number, a call, or maybe answer a security question. So I'm just going to go in and answer these security questions which I had filled in earlier, which they are using to verify my identity. Yes, I'm from Hyderabad. Everybody knows that now. And I'm just going to go ahead and set my new password out here. And whatever password policies that have been set, complexities that have been set on your on-premises Active Directory actually get carried forward to this mechanism, basically meaning that if there are certain kind of complexities in terms of number of characters, different characters, uppercase or lowercase, all of those rules and policies remain intact as this sync tool writes back this password onto your on-premise AD. And now, very quickly, this is the URL that IT has provided to me, and I'm just going to quickly jump in and start accessing what I need to access. So the first thing you notice, as soon as I enter my user ID, I'm taken to an organizational page. This is the logo of my company. I notice this and I realize, yes, I'm in the right place. This is the right credential. I can see this is a work account that I'm going to access into. I quickly enter my new password out here and I sign in. Okay. Skip that another minute. And it takes me in. So now when I sign in over here, okay, Vishal, what is this that I see? I see a bunch of applications. Could you explain why and how am I seeing this?
So as I was telling you, when she logs in, she sees a list of applications over there. Now, how are these applications populated on our page? Now, as I told you, once I am the global administrator and I've synchronized her user accounts onto my tenant, I see users over here. So Radhi is one of the users who's logged in. Okay, Radhi Agarwal. Then I have applications over here. This is what is extremely important and one of the interesting pieces of Windows Azure AD Premium. These applications are, how should I put it? It's a work in progress, which means that the number of applications which are added to this particular portfolio of applications is constantly increasing. We started off with 1,000 apps. Right now there are 2,400 apps. You know, and the inventory of apps just keeps on increasing. So when I say add, now I've just created a default apps which are publishing, which she sees over there. So I'll just give you a glimpse of what kind of apps we're talking about over here. 3 types of apps that you can add. One is an application my organization is developing. Now I'm a developer. It's a greenfield kind of implementation that I'm doing. I want to ensure that my application, adheres to the, the common standards that are currently right now in the identity space. I want to use OAuth. I want to use, federation services. I want to use SAML 2.0 tokens to authenticate my application so that the entire experience for the user is, single sign-on. Then I had an application from the gallery. And this is the part which is very interesting. If you see over here, now there are 2,000. It's not seen over there.
2459.
Sorry, yeah. So I'll just show it to you again. So I was telling you about the applications, repository which is there. I add the apps, 3 types of apps: application my organization is developing, application from the gallery, and publish an application, that is accessible from outside the network, which is basically what you do, reverse publishing. So if I say add an application from the gallery, it will show you a list of, if you see over here, there are 2,459 apps available for you right now, broken down into multiple categories. You can pick and choose which particular category of app you want to publish to your user, okay? And then you can configure the user for that particular application. So if I click on collaboration, okay, it will show a list of all the applications which are primarily for collaboration. And these are SaaS-based apps. Now, some of these apps might offer federated services. Some of them just might offer single sign-on. You have a question, sir? Can we have a mic for Anirudh? Yeah.
Can we do questions at the end?
Yes, sir.
Authentication. Now, app is one of the factors. Suppose if I want to have an inclusion of a biometric as a factor, so how will you include it?
So we do support other biometric authentication providers as well. Now, biometrics is important because we support the partners that we have right now. And that's a very important question because the next version of Windows, which is Windows 10, is going to have native support for biometric authentication. So it's going to have support for fingerprint scan, it's going to have support for face scan, it's going to have support for iris scan. So it's going to support biometric authentication out of the box with Windows. But if the current question is how do I support an existing version of an OS, we do partner with most of the identity providers or partners who provide biometric devices for authentication. So that kind of integration piece is still there.
So Vishal, basically these are all the applications that I have access to as a user in the particular role that I am in. So what is going to happen? Should I just click on it, and do I need a set of credentials to access these applications?
So for applications which are federated, you won't require credentials for it.
Like, for example,
O365, Salesforce, your applications which support federation like Box.com.
Okay.
Then of course you have SAP SuccessFactors.
Okay.
You have Cisco WebEx, Citrix Go to Live Meeting. So all these are federated applications. Applications which don't support federation, for a user, when the first time when he opens that particular app, he'll be forced to sign in, which is basically it asks for authentication information. The first time he enters the username and password, it is cached locally and encrypted in the local browser session over here and stored on Azure. Which means that any subsequent access for the same application is going to be seamless, unless, of course, the password changes. So some of the organizations or apps enforce a strong password change policy, which means every 60 or 70 days it has to change. If it's a federated app, you don't have to bother about it, because the moment you change your password using Control-Alt-Del, or you do a self-service password reset, it is reflected on the federated apps as well. The non-federated apps, you will need to have a minor tweak where you need to go and change the password, and then subsequent request or access for that particular website is going to be seamless.
So right here, when I signed into Exchange or SharePoint, it directly takes me to the website. Or if I pick any other application from here, for example, say Wikipedia, it's a SaaS-based application that understands Azure Active Directory, where my IT has pre-populated the credentials for that particular user account, tagged it against my Active Directory credentials, and allowed me a single sign-on process over here. So let's take an example of a marketing team or an HR team in a company, where I have, as company XYZ, I have a Facebook account, a Twitter account, a Tumblr account, and so on and so forth. I have a YouTube channel, YouTube user ID, and credentials. I have a team of 20 people that take care of the items that post out on these websites, and I have a user account that is created in the company's name, and all these users today have access to the password of that user account. So ideally, if any one of them actually leaves the organization, I don't have a real process in place to not allow him to access that account again, unless it's just written on paper that he will not access it. This way, all those 20 people could access these accounts, SaaS-based applications, without actually knowing the user ID, password, and credentials. Now, you mentioned SFDC, but I don't see that on my screen.
Okay, so that probably means that you need to add yourself to a group which will give permissions for SFDC.
So what IT here has enabled me to do is self-service group management, where without any manual intervention, I'm going to directly get provisioned into Salesforce.com as a user and get access to a particular account. So I see a group here that says it's for Salesforce.com users, and it's a closed group. That basically means that somebody will have to approve my joining in request, after which my access will be granted. So there, I'm going to join this group. Business justification is XYZ, and I send in a request.
So now she's joined a group which is primarily for, requesting access for Salesforce.com, which she wants to use. That application was not populated. It could be an oversight. It could be some choice that I'm giving to the user. Now, I'm the administrator. I'm the Salesforce administrator, and I want to make sure that any approvals or any requests are approved by me. So the moment she's approved or requested access, you see over here, it gets automatically populated in my approvals. Now, I'm the administrator for Contoso. So I have the applications which are already been populated, and I have approvals over here. I click on the request that Radhi has made. Oh, okay, so I just went back. So I'll go. So these are the apps that are published. Now I already approvals. I click on the request that Radhi has made, and I say approve. So the moment I approve it, okay, so I'll switch back over to her machine, and you will see Salesforce.com as an icon will be available on her My Apps URL, which means that, and over here, if you notice, I didn't do anything on Salesforce.com. I didn't go to the Salesforce.com website. I didn't go to the Salesforce.com administrative console. Beforehand, the federation service is already existing, which means that a new user called Radhi has joined my organization because of the federated services that I have with Salesforce. A user ID for Radhi is already created in Salesforce. So that's the seamless access we are talking about over here. Yeah, refresh it.
Can anybody notice a difference between what happened now and a few seconds ago? There is a new link out there that says your applications have been updated. Click here to refresh. And once I go ahead and click that, it's going to populate SFDC out there for me, while what is happening in the back end is something that Vishal is going to show now.
So the app was published, and what I've done is I have a Salesforce.com app which is published over here. So this, when I click on the Salesforce.com app, it shows me the stuff, the configuration information, or the details, or the capabilities I can enforce on Salesforce.com. Now, by way of configuration, we already configured single sign-on. We already configured user provisioning. Now, what you will notice is this configure user provisioning is unique to only federated apps. Apps which do not support federation, or apps like Facebook.com or Twitter, or which is that Wikipedia, are password-based apps, which means that you will not see this configure user provisioning. Configure user provisioning will be seen only on federated apps, and the list of federated apps just keeps on increasing. It's become the de facto standard for facilitating single sign-on. So I have configured user provisioning as well, and then assigning users. When I assign the users, you have a list of users that you see over here, which have been assigned access to this particular app. And over here, you'll see Radhi Agarwal has been added to this particular group. And then you have the attributes, or capabilities that you can configure at the application level.
So basically, there are certain profiles or attributes as a part of Salesforce.com that exist within that SaaS application, which Azure Active Directory also understands. So my IT can actually configure what profile gets mapped to which user from a single location on his Azure Active Directory portal.
So this is what you see over here: the attribute mapping that has happened between Active Directory and Salesforce.com. I also have an option called Configure over here, which shows you the application tile logo, which is going to be populated once the user logs in. It will show you the mode, which is single sign-on. I can configure the single sign-on by getting details from the Salesforce.com administrator, which is a one-time activity. I can configure the user provisioning, user security token for it, and I can have access rules defined. Access rules right now in preview, this is where I define conditional access policies. Conditional primarily meaning, is it applicable to all the users, or is it applicable to particular groups? Now, when I say group, within Azure AD Premium, I have the ability of creating dynamic group membership. All users within, let's say, City Mumbai will have access to Salesforce.com, or will be added to a group which has access to Salesforce.com. If a user is in Chennai or in Gurgaon, he won't have access. So when I create these dynamic provisioning rules, the moment a user gets added, the moment the attribute matches the region, which is Radhi is in Mumbai, she'll be added to that particular group, and when she asks for approval of workflows, I grant it, and she'll be added to that particular repository of apps that she can see over here. I can enable access rules over here. I can even facilitate multi-factor authentication. Will that app require MFA or no?
So basically what this means is that outside in the public, mobile and cloud world, how am I defining conditions or boundaries on the access that my user has? What are the layers that I can put in very easily with a single service out here? So it starts with my user ID and access that I give him. It goes then to the device. What is the device that he's coming from? Is he coming from a registered and known device? Is this device, irrespective of what platform it is, Android, iOS, or Windows, is it coming in from a registered compliant device? Should I give it access? And where is the access coming from? Is it coming from outside of my network, inside of my network? Is the user at work? So what basically that gives me control is how the user is going to access his productivity applications from which device, no matter where he is. So I put in multi-factor authentication when he is accessing it from outside. I don't allow access on certain uncompliant, non-compliant devices, and so on and so forth. We'll just, should we do questions now, or just take a few minutes and finish the demo? That's the last, takes us to the last piece of a demo, where we talk about how we link device registration and compliance to application access. And this goes not just with Windows, but also with iOS and Android devices, where any device enrolled into Microsoft Intune and is compliant can be granted access to all of these applications, and only then is there access, otherwise the user can't. So iOS and Android, yes, we've heard this lot of jargon on MDM, MAM. What happens in the Windows world and what are some of the things that we are doing with the next launch of Windows, that is Windows 10. We have a quick demo which is actually running on the latest technical preview build. So spare us if actually it doesn't go through. But it's basically what we're going to term as something called cloud domain join.
Yeah, so this is a feature which is coming in the pipeline. This is in preview right now. It works with Windows 10. So we've actually built a Windows 10 desktop over here. Now, try to understand the impact of cloud domain join. All of you familiar with the concept of joining a machine to an Active Directory domain, right? It's a no-brainer. People have been doing it for ages. Now, I'm giving a lot of features to you on Azure AD Premium. Now, can I have a capability of taking any device and joining onto the cloud directly? With Windows 10 and with Windows Azure AD Premium, that kind of facility is enabled. What are the advantages of cloud domain join? Primarily for devices that the user does not want to join to the domain. He wants to facilitate application access. You want to use Intune to manage not only the device, but also applications installed on that particular device. So in that case, the only objective left is, I don't want to join to my internal AD domain, but I want to join to a cloud domain directly. The moment you facilitate a device for joining onto cloud domain, it opens n number of services that you can enable. Roaming settings. You can have Windows backup and restore on those particular devices. You can store data that the user creates on enterprise stores. It can be natively within the same device. It can be on a file server. SSO from the desktop to organization resources. I just bought a new iPad, or maybe I just bought a new Windows Surface, which the organization has not given to me, but I want to use that as my primary device, which is primarily what organizations are calling carry your own device. I'm joining that particular device onto the domain, okay? And then I am, whatever rules have been configured as part of the conditional access policies are implemented on my particular device. I have automatic MDM enrollment through Intune, and I have support for hybrid environments, which means that it doesn't matter whether the guy is accessing an application which is hosted in-premise or whether it's hosted on Azure. Cloud domain join will open a large number of avenues for facilitating application access as well as for the IT team to control those devices. Now, the biggest challenge is, okay, something which is joining my domain, I can control it through group policies. But there's no concept of group policies when I go, join a device onto domain. How do I do it? How do I do that kind of capability? So that is facilitated by conditional access and by Intune.
So
yeah.
Very quickly, we'll jump on to our last demo. Can everybody see that this is a Windows 10 technical preview build out here that I have? How many people in the audience have used Windows 10?
We have a question over here. What is the favorite feature they like?
Okay, we'll take the question after the demo. So as you can see, this is not Windows 8, this is Windows 10. And very quickly, what I want to show here is this concept of cloud domain join. I'm in my system settings, and you can see two options here for this PC. Currently, it's a local account. So I'm just going to show that So this is a local account that is created on this machine. Let's assume this is my machine. It's my personal laptop, and my company has allowed me to bring in this and access certain applications, like, for example, Office 365, SFDC, so on and so forth. But they have this concept of device management and cloud domain join that will allow them to secure the access on my PC without actually intruding into my personal accounts or space on the device. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Connect to Cloud, which is going to ask me for the same credentials that I've been using so far. We'll give that a moment. Now, this same concept that I'm trying to show here actually goes out and works with any other platform. So if you look at an iOS or an Android device, I could sign into one of those devices using the company portal application, using the same Azure Active Directory credentials, and enrolling them into the MDM service.
Wireless, you didn't put the wireless. Oh. That's the reason. Do it again.
Spare us the internet. We'll give that a few seconds. Sorry about the internet. Meanwhile, Vishal, do you want to just close out?
So Radhi will join that domain and show it to you. Now, when she joins that cloud domain, you'll notice that it uses multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication, again, depending upon what's configured for Radhi's account, it can be a phone call that she gets which she has to answer. It can be an SMS OTP password that she has to enter. It can be the multi-factor app which is available on all those phones which she can use to authenticate. So it's a very secure method of ensuring that only she can, use that particular device and join to the domain. So So this is one of the features that's being added. This is sort of a preview feature which is there. Other capabilities that we're bringing in preview is something primarily driven by customer demand, which is administrative units. Currently, it's in private preview, which means only certain set of customers who ask for it are getting it. Based upon the user adoption and feedback that they give, we'll be rolling it out onto production. So administrative units is primarily the concept of getting the concept of organization units, which I'm sure if you guys are on the infra side, you'll probably be familiar with, OUs in Windows Active Directory. You're bringing that concept onto Azure AD Premium, which means that if I'm a central administrator, I can control which are the users who are part of an administrative unit in North America or Europe or Germany, and then grant them access based upon their particular profiles. I want to create separation of duties. I want to ensure that I have granular permissions or delegation that I can do to certain set of users. If I'm a corporate company, if I have, sister concerns, or if I have offices in different geographies, I want to ensure that since this is an Indian company, I need to have global admin rights, but there are certain administrators in those regions which I can grant regional admin roles. And when I grant them regional admin roles, there are certain set of predefined set of activities that they can perform. They'll not be able to configure or fiddle around with the global settings, but settings for that particular region, they'll be able to configure. And below that, I have regional policy and app management policy. Within that particular region, I want to designate an administrator for just app management. So these kind of granular management policies are going to be added to Windows Azure AD Premium.
Just gonna.
It's come? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it's come?
Thankfully,
Yeah.
We've got the internet backup. So as I clicked on that, it takes me to this sign-in page where it's asking me if I am okay to enroll this PC into my company's cloud domain. And I'm just going to say continue and go ahead. And here I'm going to sign in. And once again, if you notice, as soon as I enter my organizational ID, it is actually showing me the logo over here on for Contoso. And it says, so IT has put a policy that every device that I enroll into the service, when it's outside of the network, it needs to come in through a multi-factor authentication so that nobody can just start enrolling devices just by having my credentials. So I've got a call on my phone. Unfortunately, it's not connected to the audio. So I'm just going to... I don't know if that's audible. Please press the pound key to finish your verification. So it's asking me... So it's asking me to press the hash key. And the account has been verified. And it's going to join this PC to the domain. Hopefully it does. There were some questions around here on the front. If you want. Yes. So a registered device is a device that I know about, which has a certificate on it, which does the second factor of authentication outside of his identity. Now, let's say we go one step ahead. I want to understand if this device is safe enough for my user to access from. Does it comply with my security policies that I've put on it? So let's take the example of an Android or iOS phone or a Windows phone. How could it be non-compliant? The user has not set up a passcode. The device is either jailbroken or rooted. It's not encrypted. So my device is non-compliant. So I have device registration, and then I have device compliance. So we can just show that. If you just go to the portal, onto this one, and if you just go to Radhi demo, so we're just back to the portal just to answer your question. We have the devices that Radhi is accessing and authenticating from. So we just click here and say register devices. So
list of registered devices.
Yeah, okay.
So that's about it. So we have joined the domain. You see a list of registered devices for Radhi, and that's as far as we have as far as our demo is concerned. These are some of the URLs that you can look at, and let me know if you're interested in further. And do give us a feedback on what you thought about this particular session. It's very important.
Can we just take 2 questions before we close out? They've just 2 minutes.
As the non-routable domain is supposed
okay, so we're closing the session because of lack of time, but we are over here. If you have any questions, do let us know. We'll do an offline Q&A with anybody who wants to answer questions. Okay. Thank you so much for being a good audience. Thank you.
Hey guys.
quickly. So they're going to be closing note at 5:45. Okay, just 10 minutes break. Hang in there. And people have questions, step forward and ask questions. Otherwise, you can break for now and come back at 5:40. Yeah? Thank you so much.